What's so great about this place? It looks like our town in Fern Gully grew up in the same environment and was abandoned for 3 millennia. And almost every Griffin here is almost as rude as the stereotypical Manhattan pony, or prancy shore goer. One of the two. Well, at least we don't have to see...
We don't have a king, losers.
Oh, horse feathers. The Lost Treasure of Griffonstone. So this episode was about Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie being sent to the kingdom of Griffonstone by the cutie map. Why just them, we have no idea. Unfortunately, with the hype being that this place was a wonderful wonderland of wonderment, it turns out this place is in complete ruin and has a lack of manners and friendship. When I first heard about this episode, I thought 2 things. 1, that this would be another Daring Do episode, or 2, we would meet the 90s, Gilda. To the disappointment of one, I got the other. The episode had its ups and downs. The world building was great in giving us an idea of what Griffin culture is like, and what they think of ponies. It's a lot like how people from other countries think of an American. A hero complex and an ego the size of Canterlot, and possibly bigger. Having such a strong contrast between Griffins and ponies was probably the biggest contrast in comparison to something like Manhattan versus Ponyville. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is up to the viewer, but I think it's a good thing. They don't allow musical dance numbers to be a part of their everyday lives, which I can understand, but not having any form of party store, bakery, or celebration preparation place or a Griffin that is in charge of that kind of thing, it's just kind of weird. Most of the comedy in this episode is centered around Pinkie Pie and Gilda, which is really nice to have them bounce off of each other, unlike in Griffin the Brush-Off. In Griffin the Brush-Off, it was constantly mean-spirited between Pinkie Pie and Gilda. However, in this episode, it feels better with the context of where Gilda comes from. It's also really great to see that progression of friendship between Gilda and Rainbow Dash with that little flashback. It's so nice to see another side of her that is not corrupted by the harsh truths of reality that is her hometown. But then there's the bad. As was said in Appaloosa's Most Wanted, there was a lot of exposition in this episode. A lot of it. We pretty much get the same story twice. Just with the added ending after everything we got in the great big book of Griffins. At least in the last episode, we got the story once and then we moved on. Here, we're faced with it twice. We could have just had the whole story when Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie got to Griffonstone. The whole bit thing it's really old, and it gets old about halfway through the episode. Making Twilight's cameo is pointless. Very, very pointless. Just as the ride into the cutie map scene was, it was nice to see Pinkie Pie being a baker, and that she did have a life outside of the parties, the main 6, and whatnot, but I feel like it was just fan service. Unadulterated fan service. The idol in the episode was a disappointment because of all the hype. Kind of like Best Night Ever, except far less satisfying. I also find that this episode's moral was rather open-ended, and I had to watch it like 3 to 4 times to really get the episode. It wasn't until my mother watched it with me that I finally feel like I got it. In order to make friends, you have to go out of your way to make them. This was the message that I think relates to every kid and adult the most. When you're a kid, making friends is a little easier. You're surrounded by peers, and it's easier for them to be establishing a friendship because it's the very beginning. Adults can really relate to this too, maybe more than kids. As an adult, your friends from childhood, high school, or even college aren't always going to be there for you. You're going to have to try and make friends with others, but fear or pride might prevent you from asking if someone wants to hang out or be friends. Gilda represents that with both Griffin the Brush-Off and Griffonstone. But maybe I'll do an analysis video when we get a large gap between episodes. How long before the next episode, by the way? Oh, horse feathers! Whether the amount of subtlety in this episode is a good thing or a bad thing is up to the viewer. It might be a good thing because it challenges the viewer to be really thinking and possibly get others involved in the episode as well. On the other hoof, it might also be bad because it's just too subtle for a kids show, and shouldn't be looked at with National Treasure-style detective work. I will have to say that I was not a fan of Gilda, at all. She reminded me of everything bad about the bully trope from the 90s to the early 2000s and even later. They're so incredibly annoying and usually have no reason to be the way that they are. On top of that, we don't really get any context to why Gilda acts the way that she does towards the ponies in Griffin the Brush-Off. For those of you who know me, you know that I don't like that episode. However, this episode actually gave us more insight into why Gilda is the way that she is, as well as more development for her character. It made her seem like a complete character rather than a one-hit wonder. Pinkie Pie becoming a more down-to-earth pony is pretty in character for her since she has been known to be a kind of anchor, but it's very few times in the episode or in the series that she is one, but it's there. Rainbow Dash is also really in character during this episode, holding a grudge against Gilda for her actions, and since she didn't really know much about Griffin culture to begin with, it makes sense that she didn't really think that Gilda was going to be able to help much. Wow, was that moral of the story? Because I think I did it without Brawny Buck. Sorry, Brawny! By the shadows, I have never been so invested in an episode before just on the writing. But enough with that, and let's focus on something else. Like the visuals, for evil's sake! When I think of the Griffonstone that we saw in this episode, I think of two things. Our town and Adventure Time's human ruins. When compared to even the town, Griffonstone feels like it's dying and unlively, like an old newspaper that was left out in the sun for too long. Even the scones look like dried up bird poop before Pinkie Pie helps with baking powder. The town was dull, yeah, but it never felt dead. It felt more stagnant than anything else. When I look at all the buildings, I think of the destruction of Adventure Time's human ruins. It may not feel like the same amount of dread or abandonment, but it feels like the Griffins themselves have abandoned something. I said it once, so I'm going to say it again. The animators are caring about the background ponies, or Griffins. In the Friendship Express, Rainbow Falls, and the Equestrian Games, they are the very few times that we actually see Griffins. And after Friendship Express, all the background Griffins were alternate color schemes to Gilda and Gustav. I can really appreciate the amount of detail that the animators are going through to make these background characters actually unique, either physically or by some kind of design. Let's talk about the song that was in this episode.
Can't sing here.
But, how am I going to review the song?
Stone's biggest problem, lack of uplifting musical numbers.
Okay, fine, jerk. Overall, my feelings about this episode are pretty split down the middle. On one hoof, I love the fact that we got some background on a character I so desperately hated in the beginning, and now is redeemed, but in a different way than, say, Silvershill. I liked the interaction with the three and the world building around Griffins, as well as the lovely comedy in between. The moral was very intelligent and allows for a bigger amount of open interpretation. However, there's a lot of things that are really going against this episode, which counterbalances a lot of things. A lot of the backtracking to the exposition, even though we already heard it, for example. The cameo from Twilight Sparkle is a little distracting considering how pointless it was in hindsight, as well as Pinkie Pie's scene with Gummy feeling that it didn't really point us in any particular direction other than, oh look, Pinkie Pie knows how to bake. The running joke throughout the episode, the greedy bit thing, gets old really quickly. I think that the moral might have been just too subtle for this episode. So I have kind of a love-hate relationship with this episode. I love a lot of aspects about it, but I hate a lot of others. What do you guys think? Good episode? Bad episode? Just okay? Please leave your answer in the comments below. This has been your future evil overlord, Crimson Glow. And I told you I don't have any bits. Now let me get back in my own tent!